Welcome to 21st Sports Recap and Reaction for the Minnesota Vikings at the Oakland Raiders in their Week 10 matchup played November 15th, 2015. We're going to go over the scores and the stats and give our breakdown and analysis. So starting off, the first possession of the game, the Vikings went 80 yards in 8 plays, eating up about 4 minutes, capped off by an 11-yard touchdown pass by Teddy Bridgewater to Rhett Ellison, the tight end for Minnesota. Blair Walsh added the extra point, and it was 7-0 Vikings over the Raiders. Derek Carr was intercepted by Newman, and so that would lead to a field goal by Blair Walsh, a 20-yard field goal with about a minute and a half still left in the first, and it was 10-0 Minnesota over Oakland after 1 quarter of play. Blair Walsh then hit a 38-yard field goal with about 10.5 minutes left in the second quarter to make it 13-0 Vikings over the Raiders. Then with about 6 minutes still left in the first half, Derek Carr hit Clive Walford for a 10-yard touchdown. Janikowski added the extra point as the Raiders put their first points on the scoreboard, with the score now 13-7, Oakland down by 6. Then with about 2 minutes left to play, still in the second quarter, Derek Carr hit Andre Holmes for a 34-yard touchdown. Janikowski added the extra point, and now the Raiders were in the lead by 1 with the score 14-13. But then Cordarrelle Patterson would return the ensuing kickoff 93 yards for the touchdown. Cordarrelle Patterson put the Vikings back in the lead. Blair Walsh added the extra point, and it was 20-14. And so then, after getting that touchdown, the Vikings actually would end up with a chance to add some more points before halftime, but they would end up with a missed field goal by Blair Walsh. He missed a 53-yard field goal, and that was actually after the Raiders had gone 3 and out, and the Vikings took over with less than a minute and got into field goal range, but they missed the field goal, and so it was 20-14 at halftime. They would miss another field goal in the fourth quarter as both teams did not put up any points in the third. Blair Walsh's field goal, though, early in the fourth with about 11 minutes left in this game was blocked, a 39-yard field goal attempt. And then after the Raiders went 3 and out, the Vikings would drive down the field into field goal range, and this time Blair Walsh would hit a 34-yard field goal with less than 4 minutes left to make it 23-14 as the Vikings were now up by 9 points with less than 4 minutes left to play. Derek Carr would then be intercepted on the next possession in the red zone as they were on the Vikings 11-yard line. The Raiders were right there ready to score potentially a touchdown. It was first down on the 11, but he was intercepted by Newman for the second time in this game. So Newman comes up with a pair of big picks for the Vikings, and now Minnesota took over on their own 20 after the touchback, and Adrian Peterson would break an 80-yard run for a touchdown. Walsh added the extra point, and it was now 30-14 as the Vikings were in the lead by 16 points. So the Raiders now needed to score 2 touchdowns with 2 extra point conversions to tie the game with less than 2 minutes left to play. They would start off on their own 17, and they actually got all the way down to the Minnesota 10-yard line. They had first and goal, but 3 incomplete passes brought this game to a close as the Vikings win this one, and the Vikings are now in first place in the NFC North. They're 7-2. The Packers lost their 3rd straight game. They're 6-3. The Vikings are up by a game, and they will be facing the Packers next week in Minnesota. And in this game, though, it's their 3rd road victory as they're 3-2 on the road, and the Raiders now fall to 4-5. They're below 500 on the season and at home as they're 2-3 at home. So the Vikings come up with a huge road victory in this game. Teddy Bridgewater, 14 for 22, 140 yards passing and a touchdown. He also had 23 yards rushing off of 2 carries. Adrian Peterson, 26 carries for 203 yards, including that 80-yard touchdown, his only touchdown of the game. Peterson also had 2 catches for 13 yards, giving him a total of 216 yards in the game. Stephon Diggs had 2 receptions for 46 yards to be Minnesota's leading receiver. Mike Wallace had 1 catch for 22 yards. And then we look at the Raiders. Derek Carr, 29 for 43, 302 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Latavius Murray, 12 carries for 48 yards. He also had 5 receptions for 29 yards in this game, which gave him 77 total yards. And the leading receiver for Oakland, Amari Cooper, 5 receptions for 79 yards. Michael Crabtree had 4 receptions for 55 yards. And the tight end, Rivera, had 6 receptions for 46 yards. Holmes did have 1 reception for 34 yards, which was a touchdown. The other touchdown, Walford, he had 2 receptions for 18 yards, including that touchdown. Sebastian Janikowski did not attempt a field goal. He was 2 for 2 on the extra points. Blair Walsh was 3 for 5 on the field goals, 3 for 3 on the extra points. Of course, 1 was blocked, 1 was missed. Of course, that was a 53-yarder that he missed right on the final play of the first half. Then we look at the defense for Minnesota. Joseph had a sack and a forced fumble. Griffin had a sack as well. Newman with those 2 big picks. And for the Raiders, Edwards had a sack, Lofton had a sack, Smith had a sack, and Khalil Mack had a sack as they were putting the pressure on Bridgewater. Team stats, 21 first downs for the Vikings, 20 first downs for the Raiders. On third down, the Raiders were 7 of 14, 50%. The Vikings, 4 of 11, 36% converted on third downs. Total net yards, 371 for the Raiders, 385 for the Vikings. On the ground, Minnesota netted 263 yards. The Raiders just 84 netted on the ground. And through the air, the Raiders netted 287. The Vikings 122. And Derek Carr was sacked twice, losing 15 yards. Teddy Bridgewater was sacked 4 times, losing 18 yards. So 2 more sacks, but they actually didn't lose as many yards. Well, just 3 more yards. But then we look at the penalties. 8 penalties against the Raiders, 82 yards as they were really hurting themselves with those penalties. Just 3 penalties against the Vikings for 15 yards as they were very disciplined in this game. And then we look at the red zone. Both teams 1 for 3. Both teams 33% in the red zone. The Vikings time of possession 33 minutes and 1 second. The Raiders 26 minutes and 59 seconds. So the Vikings, they were pounding the rock. They were doing it on the ground, and they were doing it with their defense. Their defense finally shows up on the road as they've been playing pretty good in Minnesota on the defensive side. But here in this game, they get a big defensive effort as they were, forcing those turnovers. Of course, they had the 2 interceptions, and those 2 interceptions ended up turning into points for the Vikings as they were able to capitalize. So the Vikings come up big, and then they really put the exclamation point on it with that touchdown right after the interception, as that was 7 points right there. And of course, earlier on, when they got that interception in the first half, that led to a field goal, so it ends up with 10 points off of the interception, off of turnovers. Off of the interceptions. And right there, that's a big difference, because if you take away those 10 points, it's 20-14, and the Raiders are right there in it. But with those turnovers, they really did make the big difference in this game. And so now the Vikings looking strong on the road. They've now playing good at home and on the road, and now they're in first place in the NFC North. And that's really due in large part, I would say, to their defense that is playing phenomenal. He said they held the Raiders to just 14 points in Oakland. And this is a Raiders offense that has been putting up some pretty good points. They've been playing really good at home, and now they're below 500. And the Vikings have now won 5 straight games. So the Vikings are hitting it hot at the right time. The Packers start off 6-0, but the Vikings now 5-0 in their last 5 games have taken first place, as the Packers are on a 3-game slide, and now those 2 teams will collide in Week 11, and that'll definitely be a game to watch for sure, and that'll be being played in Minnesota. But let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. It is greatly appreciated. I hope you're having a good day and had a great weekend and enjoyed all the sports.